and I see these constant posts about bacon, about people stomping on animals on Instagram, and all these like terrible things. And it messes with me, you know? And I guess my question for you is, you've already answered that you've felt defeat before, but when this comes up, or you start feeling depressed, or you start feeling overwhelmed, what do you do about it to because Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for driving down. How was the drive today?
It was beautiful. Really beautiful.
That's such a positive way to look at it. I don't necessarily.
Well, you know what? Like, I have this rule where I just don't complain about things. So, it's part of my life. You know what I mean? Like, I'm driving down for 2 hours, and it's 2 hours of my life. So I'm not. Like, I don't know. I'm just.
Might as well make the best of it, right? You know, we were talking before the podcast, but we have a lot of friends in common. We do. Paige and Renee and Jane Velez Mitchell. And I mean, how cool. I love having you as a part of this whole group too, and kind of meshing forces. Yeah. Okay, so your content now, it's pretty obvious to me that you are vegan for the animals, but is that how your journey started, and when did it start? Yeah, that's how it started. It was 3.5 years ago. And just to preface this, you know, I never thought I was going to be vegan ever in my life. Like most vegans that I know, to be honest. Say that, no, I just think it's important because when sometimes people listen, they're like, "Oh, it's just like two crazy vegans talking." And I'm like, "No, you know, like I was born in Paris, France. That's where I was born and raised, and I ate animal products every single day of my life, basically, for the first 20 years of my life. I mean, I thought that I was going to eat buttered toast and eggs for breakfast every single day. It was my favorite meal. Like, I still love breakfast, my favorite. But that was like my favorite breakfast out of everything. And I thought I was going to eat that every single day for the rest of my life. Like, I thought it was a done deal. So I thought that was going to be my life. It was already planned out. it was pretty much already planned out, you know. So I never thought this would happen. And the way it kind of came about was through this journey of me growing as a person. When I was in high school, you know, I was a pretty miserable kid. Like, I basically remember sitting in class being like, you know, I haven't smiled in like months. Wow. And I feel like I don't even feel like doing that. And then through the internet, I discovered a lot of people who made vlogs and made videos. I started watching talks and things like that. And what that taught me in a nutshell is that I could take control of my own life. Wow. And that's when I started heavily self-educating. I remember being in high school, and instead of doing my homework, I would read books about like self-development and psychology and things that really still serve me today. I don't remember a thing from high school, but I remember all of that. Right. And and so through this process of self-educating, I came across this book called Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind. Oh, I think I have that one, or something else from the same author, but I know you might have Homo Deus, which is the sequel, or 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. Yeah, this dude is incredible. Yeah. Yuval Noah Harari, shout out to you. And I read his book, and it was one of the most thought-provoking books I ever read in my entire life. And it was a book about history that talked about history from the point of view of the different forces that shaped history. So he went through imperialism and religion and things like capitalism, or even the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, all these big sweeping movements. And at a certain point, it was talking about animal agriculture. Just as part of human history and what has happened over the past, 50 somewhat years. And he was talking about how today, as human beings, we are 7.6 billion humans in the world. And despite that, we kill for food over 56 billion just land animals. That's discounting the trillions of marine animals who are just counted in tons because no one's counting them. Even the 56 billion is somewhat a conservative estimate because no one's really counting these animals. They're just property at the end of the day. Yeah. But he was talking about that, and he was talking about how with that, the way it's come into place, the way that animals are treated today is absolutely horrible. Yeah. And I learned things like, for example, that standard practice in the animal agriculture industry is that animals are mutilated. Pigs get their tails cut off, they get their teeth clipped. Chickens get their beaks and their claws sliced. Yeah. There was a picture in the book. Standard practice. Thank you for bringing that up. That's normal. There was a picture in the book of inside a hatchery. Egg hatchery. Yeah. Because, by the way, for anyone who might be unaware, chickens who are bred for meat and chickens who are bred for eggs are completely different. Yeah. So chickens who are bred for meat are killed at about 35 to 45 days old. That's how fast they grow into market weight or slaughter weight. On the other hand, hens who are bred for eggs are completely different. They're bred to produce as much eggs as they can because that's what we use them for. That's the money. And that being the case, in the egg industry, every single male chick that's born is seen as a waste product. Yeah. And that being the case, they're disposed of their first day of life. And there was a picture in the book of a conveyor belt
That's basically where chicks
Very
are born.
familiar with
You know,
that.
and if you see a baby chick, it's like the cutest thing in the entire world. They're so adorable. And they're just put on this conveyor belt. They were just born in an incubator, and they're on this conveyor belt, and people around there, their job is to pick out the males and to throw them in the middle that brings them into this macerator that grinds them up alive.
Right.
And I remember I saw that, and I was so shocked because I couldn't believe that probably my favorite food at the time had such consequences on innocent animals.
That's a really good way to put it.
And I realized that, and what really clicked for me in that moment was that 200 pages earlier in the book, he was talking about how he was talking about the American slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about how, today we look back at something like slavery in the majority of the world, and we think it's horrible.
Yeah.
We think, how could this have ever happened? How is it possible that as human beings, we actually believed that other human beings could be property, and that's completely acceptable?
Right.
How could we believe that just because of the color of our skin, we are better than others, and that gives us the right to exploit them? That's insane when we think about it today, because we've, quote unquote, evolved from that,
right.
And the author was saying, it's easy for us to think that today. But really, when you think about it, people back then weren't that bad people. They weren't thinking about that. Especially, say, consumers, right? Because a lot of this was also consumer-driven in some capacity, even though it was free labor, it was still consumer-driven. And so if you're sitting in England, say we're sitting in England, and you offer me a cookie, you're like, hey, Ryuji, here's a cookie. I'm not thinking, you know what? Maybe the sugar, not even this cookie, maybe the sugar in this cookie comes from slavery. So maybe I should not consume it because slavery is probably something that I shouldn't support. I'm just like, yeah, give me that cookie. I want to eat that cookie.
Right, and
that's
I think most
all
people
I'm thinking.
do.
And that was back then. So people were not bad people, and it's not because they had slaves or supported slavery that say they didn't love their sons and daughters and fathers and mothers, et cetera, et cetera. The world is not that black and white. And so the author was saying that, well, in a system like that, horrible things like slavery can happen not because people are bad people, but because of what he called indifference.
Right.
And when he was talking about animal agriculture, he made the same argument. He didn't link them directly, but I made the link in my mind, right? Because he said that most people don't wake up being like, you know what I'm going to do for breakfast? I'm going to support an industry that kills male baby chicks.
Right.
No one wakes up thinking that. Or I'm going to eat a baby pig right now, like bacon, right?
I'm going to go stab one myself.
Exactly. Like no one thinks that.
Yeah.
But all we're doing is, hey, I like that bacon and eggs. Let me eat that bacon and eggs. Same as a cookie today. That cookie probably has eggs that came from an industry where the male baby chicks were ground up alive. And by the way, I just want to make this clarification real quick because people always think like, oh, this is the horrible stuff. You're always highlighting the more horrible things that are happening in the industry, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, no. I was recently at Expo West.
Oh, yeah.
It was a natural products exposition.
There, yeah.
And I was talking to all the egg farmers there. They're quote unquote humane egg farmers. They have their stand, they have their eggs, very proud, like with their packaging, where you see like the hens on green pastures. You see their, their huge, like, instead of like specialty produce here, there's like a picture of their farm where it's like just green pastures and hens running around. And they even have videos of these hens like in pastures.
Wow.
And perhaps that's part of their life. But there are still things that are standard practice in the industry. And when I talked to like 3 or 4 of them there at Expo West, and all of them, their chickens in all their family farms they have contracts with come from hatcheries where the male chicks are still killed. That's just unavoidable. That's just standard practice. You can have backyard hens. The male chicks are still going to be killed.
Right, and I really like that you brought up that point because I've heard a lot of people, because there's some celebrities that have kind of come up that have, oh, well, I only eat eggs from, my friend's farm that's down the street in LA and blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool, but for there to be an excess of females who are the ones laying the eggs, what happens to the males?
Exactly.
It's a really good point.
Exactly. And even one of the egg farmers he eventually caught on because I was with Renee from Rowdy Girl Sanctuary and she had like a vegan pin. And so I think he like eventually caught on like what I was trying to do. But he said something like, yeah, don't quote me on this, but I believe there are only about 5 or 6 hatcheries in the United States. I don't know if that's true. That's the words of that egg farmer.
Wow.
But basically, it's to show that, even in backyard hens, that's where they come from. That's where they were hatched. They were hatched in a hatchery where the male chicks were killed. And the second thing that none of them can deny is that they're going to be killed in a slaughterhouse in the end.
Right.
Like no matter, because we look at this humane life kind of thing and we talk about their lives or part of their lives rather, where it's like, well, while they're on our farms,
we don't kill them.
We don't kill them. They're going to be in green pasture. They're going to have a great life. Well, we're still going to take their eggs, but they're somewhat living a great life. Like some like, if you looked at a picture of that, you could extrapolate that that's a great life. But that doesn't change the fact that before they were there, they were in a hatchery where all the male chicks were killed. And after that, they're going to go into some sort of slaughterhouse where they're going to get their throats slit. That's just what happens. Because at the end of the day, after that, even in the most humane egg farms, the ones that I saw at Expo West, I asked them, how long do you keep your chickens? Oh, I don't know, 1-2 years. Same thing. Yeah. Standard factory farms, 1 or 2 years, off to the slaughterhouse. Backyard hens, most humane egg farms, same thing. They're going to be sent to the slaughterhouse. They'll say things like, "Oh, we put up some of them for adoption on Craigslist."
Adoption for what? For
and I'm
slaughter.
like, it's like thousands of there's no way thousands of chickens are being adopted by people who just that's not happening.
Yeah.
And even if that was happening to some capacity, which maybe it does, because he said that was just one of the farmers, by the way, not all of them do that. But still, a lot of them are still being sent to slaughter. And so by eating eggs in any capacity, we're enabling these things. We're enabling male chicks to be killed. Yeah. We're enabling innocent chickens to have their throats slit in slaughterhouses and have their bodies exploited their entire lives. But anyways, that's what I realized. And I was like, I can't support this anymore. There's no way I could support this. If I went back in time to a time when I had the choice between supporting slavery and not supporting slavery, with the conscience I have now,
right,
there is no way I would do that. You give me a cookie back then, I'm like, I am not taking that cookie. I am not eating that cookie.
I will starve.
I don't care if you think I look crazy. I don't care if it's inconvenient. I don't care about any of that. There's no way, because slavery is wrong, period, end of story. I am not supporting it.
Yeah.
And I realized that the only reason that people support animal agriculture today, and the reason that I supported it for so long, is the same exact thing. It's just because I never thought about it, and I was just indifferent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how long, because you're speaking now, you're doing videos, you're showing up at vigils, you're doing amazing activism. How long was it from the point that you said, I'm not eating animals or their products, and now I got to do more?
2.5 years. Actually, that's when I actually took action. But the real story is, as soon as I went vegan, I knew immediately that I wanted to do something about it. Because the most beautiful and profound thing that opened up to me being vegan is that being vegan for me was not about transforming into this new being. For me, it was more about coming back to who I always was. Because
I like that.
I realized that I had always loved animals.
Yeah.
And even beyond just the animals thing, I always identified as a good person who does the right thing, who's compassionate, who's kind. Those are values that I already have. And by the way, that our society as a whole already ascribes to. A lot of the values that are behind veganism, like kindness, compassion, unity, respect, those are things that most people aspire to be. And that was me.
Yeah.
And, as a kid, I remember I wanted to be a dolphin trainer, a zookeeper. I wanted to be a vet. I just wanted to be around animals. One of my biggest dreams was being a wildlife photographer. Now, as a side note, being a dolphin trainer or a zookeeper is actually exploiting animals.
Right.
But I didn't understand that back then. Yeah. I just wanted to be around animals because I'm like, I just think they're so cute. I just love being around them. And so as soon as I found out what happens to animals, and when I really understood that the issue is not just how we treat them, because of course the way that they're treated and the amount they suffer is absolutely horrible, but just the mere fact that we're using them is no different from how from how, like, for example, slavery was a staple in American culture. It was a completely normalized part of American culture. It doesn't make it right at all. Today, we exploit animals just because they're different from us. They're a different species. They don't speak English. They don't have ambitions like us. We say they're not as smart as us. They're not human beings. All these excuses that are completely irrelevant to the fact that animals clearly have feelings. They can clearly suffer. They have personalities. They're individuals. All the traits that make us valuable as human beings, they have as well. Like, why is it that I can't just go kill another human being?
Or even a dog, for that matter.
Or even a dog. It's just because they're their own person. They want to live. They don't want to be killed by me. Like, freedom only works as long as we don't infringe on other people's freedoms. That's what freedom is, right? So that's how this whole thing works. Like, I can just, punch you in the face right now because, you don't want that.
Because you have the freedom to do that. Well, wait, hold on, because I have my own rights, too. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
exactly. And animals do the same exact thing. Every single, quote-unquote, excuse that we use to justify exploiting them and to use them and to kill them, they're just superficial traits that have no bearing on the value of their lives as individuals. And from their point of view, not from our point of view, but from their point of view, whether or not I think I'm smarter than a chicken doesn't change the fact that that chicken wants to live his or her life.
Exactly.
So, when I realized that, I was like, wow, I want to change this. Yeah. I remember really distinctly being like, I feel like this is my calling in life. I feel like this is what I should do. Like I said, I always wanted to work with animals. Yeah. So I was like, maybe this kind of makes sense. But The thing is, for 2.5 years, I didn't do anything about it. And I think what it was that when you look at the scale of the problem, it's so massive.
It's intimidating.
Yeah. And to me, at least subconsciously, I think that I thought I couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
I thought that, well, this is just how it's going to be, and I can't do anything about it. So why even bother? And, why even bother thinking about it more?
And getting depressed over it.
Yeah, and getting depressed over it. I'm just going to put it to the back of my mind, keep living my life.
And I think most people do that.
And that's what I did. So, by becoming an activist, I didn't become more passionate about veganism. Rather, it was just that I took that passion that was always there and I brought it to the surface. And that switch for me came when I realized a few things. I realized that, first of all, this is going to end. And regardless of whether it is going to end historically, which I fully believe it is.
I think it has to.
It has to. I choose to believe that because it's my vision. Yeah. I'm like, no one has ever accomplished anything without believing in it first.
Right. Maybe I'll do this.
Imagine people were like, what would be kind of cool? Like we should put someone on the moon. But
I was just thinking that too.
that sounds like a hard project. Like let's just not try it. That makes no sense.
It's way too far.
You got to believe it. Right. And then you got to find the solutions to all the problems that are in your way, basically. So, so that's what I believe, and I started believing that. And then I started believing myself also, because what happened is that for 2.5 years, basically what I realized after the fact is that because I didn't acknowledge myself, and because I didn't love myself enough to believe that I could be the type of person to make a difference on the scale that I wanted to make a difference.
I like that.
And when I realized that it happened through my journey of self-actualization, I was actually in an emotional intelligence and leadership training at the time when I realized this, but the pain point for me was when I realized that because of my unwillingness to look at myself for the great person that I was and see all the gifts within me, all these animals were suffering and dying.
Ooh.
Because that's exactly what it was.
That's a really good point.
Because I didn't see the greatness in myself, I didn't do anything. Therefore, I allowed all these animals to keep being killed.
Now it's on your watch.
And it's on my watch.
Yeah.
And I realized that, and almost simultaneously, I believe that I realized that, wow, this is what I cared for. What I truly want is for animals to be free.
Yeah.
That's what I truly want. And when I realized these two things, I was like, well, I gotta do something now.
Yeah.
And that's when I started being active.
Wow. So we had kind of talked about this a little bit, but in regard to defeat, I know for me, sometimes when I feel like I'm battling this giant storm as one single person, and I see these constant posts about bacon, about people stomping on animals on Instagram, and all these terrible things, and it messes with me, And I guess my question for you is, you've already answered that you've felt defeat before, but when this comes up, or you start feeling depressed, or you start feeling overwhelmed, what do you do about it? Because if you're so depressed that you cannot help the animals, now you're not helping the animals, so you got to get better.
100%.
So what do you do?
Yeah. So for me, the way that I answer that is through a bigger journey of personal development and self-actualization, whatever you want to call it. People call it self-help, personal growth, whatever it is, just growing as a person. And I've been on this journey very committed for 5-6 years. I still have a long way to go, obviously. I have the rest of my life. But I've been on this journey, and for a long time, I read a lot of books. I did a lot of courses and stuff like that. And to me, the best answer I could give overall, I'll go into specifics in a second, but to me, the best answer overall is just be committed to this journey of personal growth for life. And through that, you'll figure things out eventually. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah.
For me, what really helped me with all this was becoming more emotionally aware of how I was feeling and learning how to deal with my emotions in a healthy way. What I learned is that many of us, as we grow up, we don't learn how to deal with emotions in a healthy way. And for me, I didn't grow up with this at all. In fact, I was very, very emotionally closed off.
Same here.
It's now, for example, for me, when something is sad to me now, I have no trouble feeling that and crying about it.
That's good.
While in the past, I couldn't do that at all. I was just disconnected.
Yeah.
I couldn't really connect with people on a real level, et cetera, et cetera. So I was very, very emotionally closed off. The way it happened for me is a lot of things. But again, on this journey of personal development, I eventually took this one training. And this one training opened me up. Now, I did the work myself in that training. It's up to us to do the work. But that was kind of the vehicle for me to start opening up. And what I learned is that, like I said, most of us don't learn how to healthily deal with our emotions, which one way to healthily deal with our emotions is to let them go. And there's this saying in transformational work that the only way out is through, and that we have to feel all our emotions in order to let go of them.
Yeah.
And again, just learning this is not enough. You actually have to apply this. So
like
the gap for me between actually learning about this and understanding that from a logical perspective and actually applying it in my life was
that's the hard part.
It was a huge gap, but through doing work and attending workshops and really trying to figure this out, like trying really hard to figure this out, I eventually started opening up, started feeling my emotions, and starting letting go of all these things.
That's amazing.
And for me, learning how to do that is one part of what has really enabled me to be effective as an activist and to not let that hold me down. And I've gone through some really painful times doing that. This one time in particular, I was not taking a training, but I was staffing a training. And as part of the training, you also do all the exercises and all the things that come with it. But I remember it was this exercise about letting go of past trauma and pain and things like that. And I can't remember exactly what the scenario was, but it doesn't matter. The point is that we were about to let go of something, and the image that flooded my mind was the image of all the animals who are suffering in the world.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was the most painful moment of my life, where I saw, like, in my mind, just, like, billions and billions of animals, like this endless sea of animals.
Yeah.
And I saw, like, and I just saw them as the victims of this world. And I felt so much pain from that. Yeah. And I cried it out so hard. Like, I was, like, it was crazy. Like, I was going crazy. Because I literally felt like all this pain was entering my body. And in that moment, I experienced so much of that, and I let it out. It was like a long, I was like screaming for a long time, just like letting it out. And that was like the most intense moment, but I've been through different moments like that where I've experienced that. And those are the moments where after I go through that, then I can come back and be happy. And because I let go of the pain. And because I let go of the pain, I can be effective and talk to people.
Dang.
Now, I think the other part of that too is being very mindful of what we put ourselves around and who we put ourselves around, because that dictates everything, right? There's this like common saying that you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Right.
So I'm very mindful of the influences I have around me, like the types of videos that I watch, like the people who are around me, et cetera, et cetera. And so, for example, you said like, oh, you see all these posts. Like, I don't see that many of these posts. I see the comments when they're on my page sometimes. Well, I see them most of the time. But for the most part, I don't see that a lot. And even if I do see that, and even if I do say like go to a slaughterhouse and like watch animal cruelty, I also balance that with positive influences. And overwhelmingly, my headspace, like I spend so much more time being positive and thinking about the change that's happening and thinking about what I'm up to and the change that I'm creating. I spend way more time on that than any type of dwelling on negativity or the horrible things that are happening, et cetera, et cetera.
Because what use are any of us going to be if we're just going to get all depressed and stay in our home? Because, I mean, I've gotten to that point, too, where it's like, I mean, I don't want to say for no reason, no, like, direct reason, that it's just an accumulation of thinking about the animals is usually what happens. And I tend to have this, like, tougher skin sort of exterior, and I'm not going to cry. And, I grew up that way. And so it just kind of was part of my life. And now it's like, I'm not afraid to cry, but it's so, like, intertwined into my makeup that it's just so hard for me. And then there'll be these times where I won't cry for 3-4 months straight, and then like something will happen and I'll just have this major, it's something with the animals, I'll just have this major breakdown. It's like all these babies out there and all these poor like helpless animals, like what the hell are we supposed to be and it's like I've finally came to this point now where I'm like, that's okay. It's okay to cry, but get up, and get back out there the next day. And that don't sit there and dwell on that and think of, oh my God, I'm not doing anything. I'm not, I'm whatever. Yes, you are. Go out there.
And that's the other part of it too, because for me, I'm like, I feel more empowered the more I do something about it, and the more that I like not just doing, because a lot of people will talk about activism as in, oh, I go to events and I do this and I do that. But for me, it's like, I'm not so much focused on what I do. I'm more focused on the difference that I'm making, and I'm more obsessed with that.
Right. And because that's going to ultimately make a bigger change overall.
And so I focus on that, and I proactively put myself in a position to see the change that's happening and to see the difference that I am personally making. So, for example, like that's part of what, like, like on social media right now, I get messages every single day from people whose lives I've impacted.
Oh, that's cool.
That's something that's happened because I've built that. Like I worked to create that. And part of the, well, I didn't know this at the time, but part of the reason I keep doing it is because the more I get that feedback, the more I can rewire myself to be like, hey, the world is changing. This actually pretty cool.
True. And even I can say for me, like my platform is not as big as yours, but I've gotten people that'll message me and say, I listened to this podcast with this person, or I saw this post that you made and I'm trying to be vegan. Here's what I'm struggling with. And it's like, I just want to cry when I see that. I don't care if it's one person, because we don't know if that one person got their whole family to go vegan, or, even if it is only one person. It's one more that wasn't vegan, and it's great. So I can't imagine the kind of feedback you get. And
no, 100%. Yeah. And that's, like I said, that's really what empowers me, like seeing that, because I understand how if you just witness animal cruelty in slaughterhouse videos and you go to slaughterhouses, whatever it is, and that's all you do, but you're not proactively putting yourself in a position to see the change that's happening, I understand very well how you can go down in a downward spiral and drive yourself into a rut. I feel like that's what I did. Like the thing is, instead of just doing that, I suppressed it on top of that. So it's like I drove myself into a rut, and then I escaped that rut by putting it to the back of my mind.
By going sideways instead of up.
Exactly. So that's what I did. But I understand how that can happen. And so for me, I'm like, well, if you feel that way, then really step up. And it's not going to be easy. Right. Like making a difference is not easy. Like if it was easy to change the world, like everyone would be doing it left and right.
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, there are so many things that go into that. Like I'm massively obsessed with my growth as a person, because I'm like, I have to constantly get better. Like I wake up every single day being like, how can I be better today? How can I learn something new? How can I step my game up? Because I just think it's a requirement for me to eventually change the world. And I always like keep my mind on the vision. Like I work really hard at it. And by doing so, I'm able to create impact. And then the more I create impact, the more I get feedback. And it's just an upward spiral. Yeah. So for me, as vegans, I think that one of the most important things that we can do is figure out ways to drive ourselves in an upward spiral instead of a downwards one. Yeah. Because it could go either way. It could go really easily both ways. Yeah. And so I think we have to make a proactive choice that, I'm going to go up. And then figure it out.
And exactly. And you're sticking to that. Now, I want to kind of take it a little bit different direction, but on the same topic of just using different terminology, using certain attitudes, something I saw on your Instagram, you were saying using the term companion animal when we're talking about the animals that we have at home. Now, why do you think, and this is just one example of a million, but like, why do you think that this is important, that they're not our pets, they're not here for us, they're here with us, right? So why do you think that maybe changing some of this terminology in society is important?
I think it's important because, to me, the main core issue with this whole animal rights, veganism, exploiting animals thing is how we perceive animals as a society. Absolutely. And how we learn to see animals as we grow up. Overwhelmingly, the frame is that animals are here for us, that animals are lesser than us for whatever reason, whether it be they're just not human beings or they're not as intelligent as us. Whatever it is, we just have such an innate, I wouldn't say innate because I don't think we're born with it, but a learned idea that animals are inferior to us and here for us, that I believe that we should do everything we can to break that. Because like I said, at the end of the day, all animals are individuals the same way that you and I are animals. And they feel pain, they can suffer, they have personalities, et cetera, et cetera. They're individuals, and they want to live just as much as we want to live. And that being the case, why should it be that I look at a dog and I believe that my life is more important than that dog's life? Or not important, but like more worthwhile. Like, why does my life on this earth have more worth than the life of a dog? And actually, the reason that we believe that is, we learn to believe this, but it's convenient for us. We like to believe things that are convenient for us. When certain beliefs benefit us, then we're going to believe it. Like,
of course, whatever fits the narrative, we're going to go with.
Exactly. Like, if you're benefiting from slavery, then you better believe that slavery is an okay thing to do and a normal thing to do. Like, you better believe that. And you better believe as a white person that you're better than a black person. Like, you better believe that. Because it benefits you, and it's very easy to buy into that. In the same way today, it's so convenient for me to believe that my life is more important than a dog's life or a cow's life or a chicken's life. Like, that's cool. Like, I wouldn't mind that personally. But when you really look at it objectively, that really doesn't make sense.
Well, and I think part of it goes into this, it's like part like old school, survival trait that's like, well, I need to live and blah, 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 long time ago. This doesn't have to exist anymore. But then it's kind of mixed with a lot of selfishness and a lot of greed and a lot of just people are crazy to me these days. Like, I mean, I guess we can, it's not really these days. We're just living in these days because look what we did with slavery and everything else. But it's just insane to me. Like, I guess I understand where you and I are sharing these stories and we're like, oh, I ate an egg and I never thought of the whole process and how many chickens died and what happened to get that egg. I just see food. And I guess I get that. For me, it is so crazy to me when I see some of these videos of people beating up animals or people just not giving a shit. Like maybe even some of the comments that are on there and they're like, oh, fuck it, it's just a pig. And it's like, wait, what? Like, how does that happen? Are people just so conditioned that they've lost their hearts, you know? Like, I know you do a lot of street activism, but how do you deal with those kind of people that are just, it just seems like they don't care at all?
Yeah, with empathy for me personally. Because the more I've done this work on myself, this work of like growing or like whatever you want to call it, the more I see through people. Like, I'm not like, I can't look into someone's eyes and understand their life story, obviously. But for example, when people just say they don't care, I can just see that somewhere there's like some pain that they haven't let go of. Like I just kind of, I see that. And so I'm very empathetic towards that.
I was just going to say empathetic's the word I'm thinking of.
You know, so that's really how I deal with it. But you know, to finish that thought we were going on earlier real quick, because I think this is the key issue with this is that really this is the way that we see animals. I want to do everything I can to dismantle that.
Yes.
You know, the technical term for it is speciesism. The idea that we place the interest of certain animals over the interest of other animals, the self-interest, right? So for example, oh, my self-interest of living is more important than the self-interest of a chicken to live. That's what speciesism is. And it's so deeply ingrained in our society. In everywhere you look, it's basically there. Like every single time that we eat animals or we eat animal products, just as one example, we are reinforcing the idea that animals are here for us and not with us.
Absolutely.
And this extent, like there are many different levels to this, right? So for example, with the pets thing, like I always thought I was an animal lover, like I said, and I always loved seeing dogs and stuff like that. But I realize now that even the way that I approach them was still from this place of animals are here for us and not with us. Like I would see a dog in the streets and I would be like, oh my God, you're so cute. I want to pet you. I want to pick you up. I want to touch you. Come here, come here, come here. If you don't want to come here, I'm going to catch you because I want to hold you.
I want
like, it's all about me. It's all about me. I want to pet you. And like, you know, I thought about it that way. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And later on, I realized that, wait a second, this dog is actually their own person. If
they can make their own choice.
If they don't want to hang out with me, then they don't have to. And if I go up to them and they leave, they're clearly telling me, dude, I don't fuck with you right now. Like, not now, okay? Like, leave me alone right now. And I can just leave them alone. And, you know, part of how that's perpetuated this ideology that we are better than animals is through our language. We all know that language plays a huge part in how we see the world, right?
Yeah.
And so with animals, even something as innocent seeming as pet is such a possessive term. At least the way that it's connotated in my mind.
No, I see it that way too.
You could define it any way, but like for me, the way I grew up, pet is like I own you.
Yeah.
You are mine. And I'm like
a slave.
like, yeah, and I'm like, no, like, you are not mine. Like, if I don't have companion animals currently, but if I did, I wouldn't be like, you are my animal. Like, you're mine. Like, I own you. Like, you know, it's like, hey, what's up? We're friends. We're roommates. You're my kid, maybe. Like,
we're homies.
We're homies. Like, you know, like, a lot of my friends call their companion animals their children, which makes so much sense to me. And by the way, this is what I'm going to do with my parents. 100%, like, my parents are going to have non-human grandchildren. Like, I'm going to hit them up, be like, yo, you're having grandkids. They're like, oh my God, when are they coming? And I'm like, oh, they're already here. They're like, they're
adopted?
like, yeah, they're like a chicken. And they're like, what? And you're like, yeah, it's chicken. You know, and like, I don't know, that just makes sense to me. Like, that's, yeah. So.
No, I agree with you. It's so funny because I have 5 adopted cats, and I every time I come home, like I call them friends. Hi, friends, you know.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I've kind of adopted that whole thing. Like, well, maybe they don't want to get pet, maybe they don't want to get picked up.
Yeah.
And I noticed this more now. That I'm very like, you know, if my cat's not getting into trouble or like gonna hurt himself, do whatever the hell you want, you know. But when I see the way that other people do things, like I'll see people walking their dogs on the street and they'll yank their chain or they'll you know, pick them up, and it's like, okay, if that dog is not in danger to himself or another animal, why are you doing that?
Yeah, just let them be. Just let them be.
Yeah, why do you feel that you own them? Like,
yeah,
it's
well, and that's the thing. That's just what we grew up thinking. Like,
absolutely.
That's just what it is. Like, I was like that. You were like, we were all like that at some point.
It's true.
And so I don't think that is we don't lack the values. That's what's so beautiful about our movement, is that we don't lack the values. Our society already embraces values like kindness, compassion, unity, respect. Is just that we don't always apply them, right? And in the case of animals, we don't apply them. Like, not only to the animals that we blatantly exploit, like the ones that we exploit for food, but even our companion animals, by calling them pets, by yanking them, by picking them up when we want to pick them up. We're like, hey, do you want to say hi to my dog? If you want to say hi to my dog, then you can say hi to my dog. I don't care how my dog feels. It's not about them. It's about you. And it's about me showing you how cute my dog is and me getting validation from how cute you think my dog. Okay, anyways, we're not going to get into that. But, like I said, we already have all those values. And so I was just thinking about this. If you ask people these simple questions, like, hey, do you think that, what do you think about killing animals when we don't have to? Oh, you probably shouldn't do that. What do you think about exploiting animals? Oh, we probably shouldn't do that. What would you think about, like, mutilating an animal? Oh, that sounds horrible. You know what? What if right now I give you a list of 3-4 things, 3-4 items that you could just stop buying, and guess what? Those items are actually some of the items that cause the most harm and suffering to animals across the world.
Absolutely.
Actually, not only that, the industries that produce those items are very harmful to the environment and actually are the leading causes of many problems such as ocean dead zones, rainforest deforestation, species extinction, and greenhouse gas emissions.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, what if I told you that, how like you have several family members that died from heart attacks?
I was going to say high blood pressure.
What if I told you that if you stop buying those products and you stop consuming those products, you would actually be proactively fighting the leading causes of death, at least in the United States, and probably across most of the Western world. What if I gave you this list of like 3-4 items, like, and all you had to do is to stop buying those products. You could buy other products that actually fulfill the exact same needs, even better because they don't harm animals, they don't harm the environment, and they don't damage your health. If I just told you make this simple switch and you can have all this upside with barely any downside, would you want to do it? Most people would be like,
sounds attractive.
That sounds great. You're like, okay, great. That's what veganism is. And they're like, oh, hold up.
You threw the B word out there.
like, I can't do that.
That's way too much.
That's right. That's how it is. But we already have all those values. Same like you're like, hey, like I have 2 juices right here. I have one beverage that's going to cause you massive health problems. You're going to feel horrible. You're probably going to feel groggy. Like you're going to have some sort of heart disease later on. Like I don't know what it is. I have this drink and I have another drink that's actually going to promote health. Like which one do you want to choose? The one that promotes health. Well, what do you see people drinking? Coke or green juice?
I know that's a whole nother thing. That's like, it's the lack of education. When you start looking at some of these, like I was talking to somebody from Atlanta not too long ago on the podcast, and she's talking to me about like these dead zones and these certain areas that like they're people that are living under minimum wage. Maybe they don't have a job. Maybe they're on welfare. Maybe they're on, county funding or whatever, state funding programs. Mm-hmm. They can't get to fresh produce. They're given food stamps. They're allowed to work at fast food joints. Mm-hmm. So not only are we talking about animal cruelty, but now we're talking about fast food and liquor stores. Yep. What the hell? And these same people are the ones that need to go to the doctor for heart disease and diabetes and XYZ, but they don't have the education because they don't even have the money to purchase a TV to watch this kind of stuff. And it ends up being this freaking terrible whirlwind of problems. And I feel like the position that you and I are in, that we're able to educate people and we're able to talk to people. And, frankly, in America, most people are able to listen and make certain choices. And so it's like, I think that's one of the most frustrating parts for me is like, you have access to these fresh fruits and vegetables. You have access to a car, to water instead of soda. And
yeah. I mean, from what I've seen, most people who might say something like, well, veganism sounds great, but like some people can't afford it. The people who say that are the people who can actually afford it in all situations. Right. But I mean, beyond that, but that's a very real problem though that we get to solve. Like we should solve that. And like the deeper you go in that rabbit hole, the deeper you find yourself in like weird territories. Like I was just reading How Not to Die by Michael Greger,
I have
which is an incredible book. And in that book, he talks about how medical professionals, well, first of all, a lot of them are not trained on nutrition.
They have an hour of nutrition training.
Yeah, and they're like the whatever lobbies that are behind like
the
American
Heart Association, all that kind of stuff.
Whoever I can't remember the details, but people who are supposed to be promoting health are actively lobbying against physicians to get education in nutrition, like that kind of thing, which is just insane. And in his talk, Uprooting the Leading Causes of Death, one of the most striking things that Michael Greger said was that, there's this frame in the medical community where it's like, well, we could tell our patients this, but we could tell our patients that, what, if you just switch to a plant-based diet, you could actually prevent heart disease. We could tell them that.
But then we'd lose a client.
We'd lose a client. They wouldn't make money out of it because, this is not my opinion. This is a physician explaining this, by the way, just to clarify that.
Yeah.
But, he's like, well, physicians are trained to make money, not to solve the problems, in a way, if you tell people to just switch their diet, you don't get money from that. But if you prescribe them the pill, then you get money out of it. So first of all, they're incentivized to do that.
Yeah.
But just on top of that, there's just this frame amongst doctors. Apparently, I don't know this for a fact. This is again Dr. Greger saying this, that well, our patients, they probably wouldn't comply with that. Maybe they can't afford it. And Michael Greger's like, so what? We're just not going to tell them.
Right.
We're not going to tell them what they should hear because we don't think that they have the willpower or the desire to actually heal themselves the right way.
See,
what is this?
And I've had a few vegan doctors on the podcast, and so many different perspectives. One of them was part of What the Health, actually, and we were talking about Dr. Greger too. And it's like, I don't blame the doctors most of the time. Yes, they could be doing some more research. Yes, they could be whatever. But when they are being taught by these giant institutions that are being funded by these, dairy and meat companies, the availability of the information is skewed to what they want them to hear. And like you said, we've got these lobbyists in the pharmaceutical industry too, and it's not profitable to tell people to go eat plants. And it's frustrating. And because people listen to their doctor, they got a white coat on, and then they go to see their doctor and say, oh, I'm not feeling good. And the doctor says, take this medicine and maybe stop eating ice cream instead of, why don't you stop eating everything you're eating and completely switch your whole diet around? People listen to the doctor. Oh, I don't need to do that. I got all these pills on me.
Yep. This is what I think is key to understand about all of this.
Yeah.
Human beings, we can be wrong about anything. In his book, All Marketers Are Storytellers by Seth Godin, one of my favorite books, he opens with a story of George Riedel, who sells wine glasses and all sorts of glasses, actually, for all sorts of beverages. But the story that Riedel tells is that, if I give you this one wine glass in this particular shape, your wine is going to taste better. That's the story that he tells. And actually, he tells the story about many different glasses. He's like, this is the best glass for whiskey. This is the best glass for water. I don't know. He just has all these different glasses, right? And what's so crazy is that when you really think about it, just using common sense, how could the shape of a glass change the taste of a beverage?
Right.
It's not possible. And actually, to prove that, double-blind tests have proven that the impact that the shape of a glass has on the taste of a beverage is exactly zero.
Right.
So there's no impact. But that being the case, wine experts will swear that a George Riedel glass makes their wine taste better. Not because they're stupid people,
because it's good marketing.
But because of good marketing, and us as people, we believe stories. And when we like a story, we're going to find evidence to back that story up. Yeah. So because they want the wine to taste better in that glass, it's going to do so. It's the same thing. People prefer Coke. People prefer Pepsi.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. If you think Coke is going to be better, then the Coke is going to be better because you want it to be better. So that's how we work as people. And so the question we got to ask ourselves is, if wine experts could be that wrong about wine, about something that's so obvious to many of us who just use common sense to debunk this myth, then what could I be wrong about? What could doctors be wrong about? What could environmentalists be wrong about? What could everyone be wrong about? And so I think one of the most important things that we should do is always look at ourselves and be like, where am I doing that? Where's my George Riedel wine glass?
Ooh.
Where is it that I'm not looking at the world the way that it actually is? And where is it that I'm tricked by other things? Like, for example, a lot of people, like you said, believe doctors straight away. But like Dr. Michael Greger uncovers, doctors are not required to have nutrition education, or at least very, very minimal. Yeah. And so there are a lot of things that they don't know. We've known for decades that a plant-based diet can reverse heart disease, but that's still not mainstreamly accepted in the medical profession. A lot of doctors are not going to be like, oh, you're at risk of heart disease, why don't you try a plant-based diet? A lot of them are not going to say that. Again, not because they're stupid, but just because the same way that wine experts can be wrong about a wine glass, doctors can be wrong about their own profession.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a really good analogy there, because I mean, here's the thing, too. The human body is very complex. And there are things that we do not know and things that we assume and things, whatever. But like you had said with Greger and Campbell and Clapper and, a bunch of these top vegan doctors, they have extensive peer-reviewed studies for decades. Like, these are, not a 2-week study on a mouse. These are human studies that have proven not only that a plant-based diet helps people live well and they can thrive and all these things, but that it will reverse many conditions. And, that's scary information for mainstream media to pick up. So I totally get it.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to switch it a little bit.
Let's do it.
Do you feel that every vegan should get into activism? Or do you think everybody kind of has
I mean, I think, here's the thing, right? You could actually make the argument that we should from a logical perspective. Like, you could argue that very easily because the argument is quite simply that, so you walk down the street and someone is beating up a dog.
Right.
You have 3 options. You could help them beat up the dog. You could just walk past and not participate. Or you could actively go up and be like, dude, stop doing that.
Yeah,
right?
Get in between him.
So you have those 3 options. And the correct option is to actually step in and be like, hey, you should stop, do everything you can, not just like, dude, stop that, but actually do everything you can to stop that from happening because the dog is being a victim in that case.
Absolutely.
So that being the case, if we put that in the context of veganism, then being vegan is just walking past and not doing anything about it. So that being the case, then from a logical perspective, then maybe every vegan should get involved. But my personal perspective is that beyond that, I think that a lot of vegans want to get involved,
I think so
but just
too.
are not doing it. Like, that was me for the longest time.
Yeah.
Like, the reason that I wasn't active for the longest time was not because I didn't think it was necessary. It was just because I didn't know how to get involved, and I didn't even really know that I could get involved. I didn't even really know that I could do something about it. So that's what it was.
These huge organizations, Anonymous for the Voiceless is a big one that I love doing down here. We started our San Diego chapter, it was a little over a year ago now, which has been great. Because for me, I was like, okay, I'm kind of afraid to do protest or street activism. And then I tried AV, and I was like, you know what? This is actually really cool because I can sit here and I can talk to people and show them footage.
Exactly, and activism is fun. It's super fun. Like, I have a lot of fun doing activism. I've met tons of incredible people doing activism. Some of my closest friends I've met through activism. I've really found a community of people who understand me that I can bond with.
Absolutely.
Because by being vegan, I have a ton of people message me saying that they're vegan, and their message is something along the lines of, I'm vegan and I'm lonely because no one around me gets me. And I'm like, if you get involved in activism, you'll find plenty of people who support you, a whole new family who understands you, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that, beyond what we should do, I think that a lot of us want to do it. We just don't know how to do it. And so that's one of the things that I try to show. And beyond that too, honestly, I've never said this, but
first time.
I think this is just kind of my opinion. I think I lack life experience to say it as a definite, but with anything, patterns that I've seen, and I've seen other people talk about this in different fields, is that 20% of stuff creates 80% of the results.
Oh, right.
I think that in activists in general, there are 20% of the people who are going to do 80% of the work.
Absolutely.
In terms of the movement. So it's should everyone get involved? I don't think everyone needs to go to a vigil or a cube of truth in order for the world to be vegan eventually.
No.
I don't think so at all. So in that sense, if you don't want to get involved, then that's fine with me because I'm going to choose to be part of the 20% of people who are going to make 80% of the difference. If you want to be part of that 20%, then go do that. You should go do that because that's going to be important because you want to be part of the 20%.
Yeah.
But, as a hobby, I think it's great for you. I think it's it does definitely make a difference, but in the end, I don't think that's going to be the determining factor. Now, do I think that when, for example, we organize the Animal Rights March, that's the huge Animal Rights March, should every vegan come out? Yeah, every vegan should come out.
That is a good experience.
Everyone should come out to that.
Yeah.
Should everyone, in my opinion, maybe go to a vigil at least once? Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great experience to have. Same way where I'm well, should you try a vegan burger sometime? And you're yeah, you should probably do that. You should probably go to a vigil. It's obviously different, but I'm you should probably try all these things. It would probably be good for you, especially when there are these huge historical actions. I'm show up. And of course, the more you've been active before, the more you're going to be prepared for that. So that I think everyone should go because that I think is going to be important.
Yeah.
But apart from that, should everyone be oh my god, am I not vegan enough because I don't go to activist events twice a week? No, I absolutely don't think so. I think you probably want to do that. I think most of you listening want to do that, especially if you've made it this far and you're this passionate about the topic. So you should do it for you and the difference that you're going to make. But I don't feel everyone should feel obliged to like make this a huge priority in their life necessarily.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's different times in people's lives too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So cool. Well, I feel like we're getting kind of close to the end here. I definitely want to mention where people can find you and more information about you. But was there any last topics you wanted to bring up before we start doing that?
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it so much.
No, it was so amazing having you here in person. I watch you a lot online, and just being able to talk to you and pick your brain, it's cool. Thank you.
Cool.
So I guess last little thing. So if people want to find you on Instagram, it's Peace by Vegan. You also have a YouTube channel, right? It's also Peace by Vegan.
Yep. Everything's Peace by Vegan.
Okay,
I have a Facebook page. I have a Twitter that I don't use yet. I think I have a Snapchat, and I want to be on TikTok soon.
Oh, so I heard about that one.
Yeah.
I haven't used it yet.
Yeah, I want to be on TikTok. So if you're listening right now and you're on TikTok, hit me up. I have no idea how to dominate TikTok, but I want to dominate TikTok. That's like one of my next goals.
Over.
But yeah, Peace by Vegan everywhere.
Awesome. Well, that makes it nice and easy.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
And thank you everybody who's sticking around and listening, and I hope you enjoyed. We'll talk to you later. Bye.